PhysicsWallah is officially going public.
Hello बच्चों, क्या हाल चाल?
Yes, an Indian edtech company that started as a YouTube channel run by a single teacher, Alakh Pandey, has filed for an IPO in 2025. But what makes this interesting is that another Indian edtech giant, which was also started by a single teacher, Baiju Ravindran, made headline for the exact opposite reasons. Multiple lawsuits, customer complaints, and governance failures. It's like two companies that began the same way, heading towards completely different futures. And that's why PhysicsWallah's IPO is such a big moment. It's the first real test of whether Indian public markets are finally ready to trust edtech again. Welcome to our weekly Indian startup news show. I'm Pankaj, your host, and you're watching Backstage with Millionaires, a channel that's also part of Zerodha's 01 network. Now, before we talk about the IPO, let's first understand how PhysicsWallah even got here. Because if you look at the company's number, one thing is very clear. This was not a smooth ride. Over the last 3 years, PhysicsWallah has gone through the same challenges that every other edtech platform faced. Firstly, the online demand peaked during the COVID, and then it dropped sharply. And the only way for the companies to survive was to go offline. But unlike Baiju's, which opened expensive centers with no clear path to profitability, PhysicsWallah actually managed to turn offline into a growth engine. And here is the proof. In FY23, PhysicsWallah operated just 28 offline centers, which included their Vidyapeeths, Pathshalas, and other formats. By FY24, that number jumped to 126. And by FY25, they had 198 centers, which is a 7x expansion in just 2 years. And obviously, such a massive expansion needed capital. And for this, the company spent 124 crore rupees on offline capex in FY23, then 268.1 crore rupees in FY24, and finally 377.7 crore rupees in FY25. But this expansion was very strategic. The company only opened the offline centers where it thought it could make money. For example, PhysicsWallah's offline revenue grew from 281.1 crore rupees in FY23 to 1351.8 crore rupees in FY25, which means that the company's offline revenue is almost as much as its online business, something that no other Indian edtech company has been able to do. Now, with that being said, the company is still into losses, but in my opinion, that's not a big worry because the company is spending heavily for the right reasons to expand its offline centers and new offline avenues. It's not losing money because it's spending on ads or getting an expensive brand ambassador. For context, PhysicsWallah today runs one of the largest education ecosystems in India, 13.9 million subscribers on their main YouTube channel and nearly 100 million subscribers across all online networks. And as for offline, they now operate nearly 200 centers across the country. And with each new batch, the company expands its omni-channel network. And now let's talk about its IPO and why it's a big deal for Indian edtech. See, for the last 3 years, this entire sector has largely been written off. The phrase edtech is dead became a common punchline. And it's not like this was overblown or something. Many companies genuinely did some big mistakes and even frauds in many cases. And that's why when the edtech bubble burst, investors became very cautious to fund new companies. But PhysicsWallah was a ray of hope even in those tough times for edtech. And now it going public is a signal that Indian edtech is not really dead. It's actually evolving and maybe now ready for a second inning. And when I look at PhysicsWallah today, their strategy seems very interesting. Their model looks less like Baiju's and more like Akash, a large offline base supported by a huge top-of-funnel online audience. It's like YouTube serves as the discovery engine for the company and its offline centers drive the revenue. And this hybrid model is actually something that works in India, especially in edtech. People in tier 2 and tier 3 don't want to spend 20 to 30,000 rupees on an online course, but the same people will easily spend lakhs on offline tuitions. And this is what PhysicsWallah has understood and is strongly working on. Which brings us to the final point. What does this IPO really represent? See, if executed well, this could become a blueprint for Indian edtech's second inning, the chapter where industry moves from hyper growth to sustainable growth, where the hero of the story is not the company that raises the most money, it's the company that gives results to the students and their parents. And if PhysicsWallah pulls this off and if its IPO is a big success, it would prove that Indian investors and public are ready to trust edtech again. Okay, I want to take a short break to tell you guys about something that we're building on the side at Backstage with Millionaires. So a few months back, we realized that India is going through an EMI trap. For example, even on salaries of 30 to 40k per month, people go ahead and buy things like an iPhone or a car. And most of this is on EMI. Today, for example, 70% of all iPhones bought are on EMI. 80% of all cars are bought on EMIs, which shows that people can't really afford these things. They just make an impulse decision and buy it. And this forces young people to live paycheck to paycheck. Most of the salary basically just disappears in EMIs. And this is for the people who actually pay EMIs on time. Almost half of the people just default on their bill payments, which creates all sorts of issues. And that's why we felt that there is a need for a platform that helps people understand their money, where they are spending it, and how to avoid overspending and get into a trap. With AI simplifying so many things at scale, we wanted to build an AI-powered ecosystem that helps users understand and take control of their finances. So we started working on this idea around June of this year, and in August, we raised a pre-series funding from AJVC, which is a micro VC fund run by Aviral Bhatnagar. And now we finally have a prototype ready. It has features like tracking your expenses and giving you actionable insights on all your finances. And we have so many features more in the pipeline. So what I want is for you guys to test out the early version of the app and give us some feedback. If you're in the 18 to 30 age bracket and starting with your financial journey, then this will be very relevant for you. There is a link for a form in the description down below. If you fill it, my team will reach out to you and give you details about the app and ask for your feedback. We are basically looking for as many people as possible to give us feedback so that we can improve personal finance experience for hundreds of millions of Indians. This will take just 10 to 15 minutes of your time, but it'll really mean a lot to us. So please check it out. And now coming back to the video. Alright, next up, Nvidia, the world's most valuable deep tech company, has joined the India Deep Tech Alliance as a founding member. And this Deep Tech Alliance has already pooled $2 billion to fund India's next generation of AI, semiconductors, robotics, biotech, and space startups. And while Nvidia itself is not putting money into the fund, what they're offering might be even more valuable. Their technical expertise, their GPU knowledge base, and training through the Nvidia Deep Learning Institute. To understand why this is huge, we need to understand what the India Deep Tech Alliance actually is. This is a coalition created by top US and Indian VCs, including Axel, Bloom, Premji Invest, Gaja Capital, Idea Spring, Venture Catalyst, and many more. And this coalition is created specifically to solve one problem. India has talent, India has ambition, but deep tech funding has always been painfully slow. And that's because most Indian VCs invest in SaaS or marketplaces, simply because they scale faster. Deep tech startups, on the other hand, need a lot longer before you can see results, which means it requires a lot of patient capital. But all of that is now changing. India has announced a 1 trillion rupees research and development innovation fund, that's almost $12 billion, focused entirely on deep tech. Then there is another 10,300 crore rupees allocated for the India AI mission focused on AI. This is like the first time that India is trying to build real technological sovereignty, from chips to space to AI infrastructure, instead of depending on foreign companies. And that's why Nvidia's entry is very symbolic. For the world's leading AI hardware company to say, we want to mentor your startups, train your engineers, and work with your policymakers is a massive vote of confidence. Think of it this way. 10 years back, India's startup ecosystem was mostly e-commerce, food delivery, and fintech. But now India has over 1.8 lakh startups and more than 120 unicorns. And the next wave won't come from delivery apps. It'll come from hard science, hardware, and deep AI. And Nvidia joining this alliance signals that India is no longer just a software service country. It's becoming a serious contender in deep tech innovation. Alright, moving on to some quick news updates. Tesla has appointed Sharad Agarwal, the former head of Lamborghini India, as its new country head for India. Sharad, who most recently worked at Mahindra-backed Classic Legends, steps in about 6 months after Tesla's previous India head Prashant Menon exited. And his hiring signals Tesla's push to strengthen its presence in India. Following the launch of Model Y and new showrooms in Mumbai and Delhi, the company is actually aiming to grow in India's luxury EV market, after Tesla only managed to sell a little over 60 Model Y in their first month in India. Next up, Indian quantum computing startup QpiAI has unveiled Kaveri, a 64-qubit superconducting quantum processor, which is the most powerful quantum chip ever built in India. Launched at a science and technology conclave attended by the Prime Minister, the chip aims to boost India's capabilities in areas like cryptography, optimization, and advanced machine learning. Kaveri will be commercially available by the late 2026, marking a major step up from QpiAI's earlier 25-qubit system. Next up, logistics startup Porter has laid off over 300 250 employees, just months after raising $200 million at a unicorn valuation. These layoffs will affect around 18% of their workforce, and these layoffs are happening because the company recently merged their truck and two-wheeler delivery divisions to streamline operations. And Porter says that this is a one-time restructuring aimed at building a more financially resilient business, and that affected employees will receive severance and support. Next up, Lenskart closed its IPO on 4th November, and the company successfully managed to raise 7,278 crore rupees as their IPO was oversubscribed by over 28 times. And on the same day, Lenskart's founder and CEO Piyush Bansal also teased their latest Smartglasses, which seems to be a competitor to Meta's Ray-Ban glasses. Alright, now let's move into the funding news segment for today's video. This week, Indian startups raised a total of $61 million, which is significantly lower than last week's $125 million. And now let's look at some of the companies that have raised funds this week. The first one I want to talk about is Nagpur-based modular furniture maker Spacewood. They basically help people set up stylish modular homes and offices by making modular furniture. Think of them as the people behind those cool, ready-to-fit kitchen cabinets and wardrobes that you see in fancy apartments and offices. And they've raised 300 crore rupees, or almost $36 million at a valuation of 1200 crore rupees. Following that, we have a Bengaluru-based logistics startup called Stackbox, and they are building smart software for the supply chain world. So if you're a brand or a distributor and are trying to juggle between warehouses, trucks, orders, and delivery across many places, it gets very messy. And Stackbox gives you one platform that handles all of that, from managing what's in your warehouses to planning the best delivery routes to keeping your inventory and orders synced in real time. And they have raised $4 million. After that, we have a Bengaluru-based space tech startup called Yulu. They are creating smart satellites to track what's happening on Earth, not through regular photos, but by picking up invisible radio signals from things like ships, planes, or devices. Think of it as a superpower for detecting hidden activities at sea or in far-off places. So for example, if someone wants to hide a ship, Yulu satellites can spot the signals it's sending out and figure out exactly where it is, how it's moving, or even how long it's been kept in one place. Kind of like tracking a footprint that's usually invisible. And they have raised 19 crore rupees or $2.3 million. Next, we have another Bengaluru-based space tech startup called Sala Aerospace, and they are building advanced drones and unmanned aerial vehicles that can fly and make decisions on their own using their AI pilot. Sala's special AI lets drones adapt and carry out tasks in tricky GPS-denied zones like deep forests or jammed battlefields. And this makes them very critical for modern defense missions, which is why they're already closely working with Indian Navy and Indian Army. And they've raised $1 million. And finally, we have Noida-based Blip, a company that is solving the headache of finding parking in crowded cities. So if you're driving to work, a mall, or a public place, Blip's app lets you book a parking spot in advance and even request a valet to park your car for you. And they have raised 50 lakh rupees. Alright, that's all the startup news I have for you this week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.